Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Ministry Talks Podcast.
Yes. What's going on?
What's happening, man?
How you feeling?
Doing pretty good, man. This is season 3, episode 3.
Can you believe it?
I know. It's been pretty good so far. I really enjoy doing this with you, man.
This is probably one of my favorite things. I mean, one, I love hanging with you and talking with you.
Right.
But then to now, like, actually get in here, talk about a topic that we've talked about for many years.
Right.
A little bit more refined.
Yes.
It's a little bit more refined, but it feels good.
Absolutely. Hey, we want to thank everybody for joining us. Thank you for your emails. Thank you for doing the whole buy us a coffee.
Yes.
We greatly appreciate it. And so we want to bring you guys some great content. And so if you would like to, go check us out at buymeacoffee.com/mintalkspodcast.
Yeah.
It will be in the description below. And so, you get some bonus content, some PDFs, some resources that we've been looking at and all of that kind of stuff. So I'm pretty excited about today's episode, though.
I am too, because it kind of piggybacks off of the last episode.
Correct. Yeah.
But this is a little bit more now, another layer.
Right. Because last episode we talked about the importance of an education as a pastor.
Yes.
And if you missed it, go back and watch it. It was a great episode, episode 2.
Yeah.
But in this one, and I ended it by saying this, even through my education and everything, I can definitively say I've never been trained to be on a church staff.
And that to me blows my mind, because you've been doing this for 25 years.
Correct.
And you've been senior pastor for what, 14, 15?
About 13, 14 years.
Okay. I did an intern program at my church.
Mm-hmm.
The intern program was through Northwest University, but it wasn't a fully college accredited program.
Right.
So it was about 40 young adults,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not exaggerating, 40 young adults between the ages of 18 anywhere to like 30, early 30s. And you have free manual labor.
Right.
Now, let me say, I say that, but let me also set it up by saying we had daily devotions. We were in the church. We were literally in the church Sunday, serving all day.
Right.
We had 3 services, 9, 11, and 6.
Mm-hmm.
And then you were back to church on Monday, Tuesday, and then you were there at like 9 a.m. And so then you got devotion from 9 to 9. It was a full day.
Right.
But on Monday nights, we would have a college professor come down, teach a class. I was not the best student, like I said in the last episode. But there was something to be said about like learning on hand.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you're actually in the position.
Right.
Because those are two different things.
They are.
Like, it's one thing to teach me and show me, hey, Isaiah, when you have a budget.
Mm-hmm.
Or, hey, Isaiah, when you have a problem kid, or maybe I was the problem kid. But now being now being the youth pastor, young adult pastor, sitting on the other end of the table having the conversation.
Right.
Like, all of that it prepared me, but it still didn't prepare me.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think as the caveat for all of this, I really want to say there's no specific training you can have, because every church staff is just a little bit different.
Yeah.
But I do want to say this. So the very first time I was ever on a church staff, I was actually the janitor of a school and the church together, because the church owned a Christian school. And so I was there. I was told when to be there. I was told what to do. I was told where to, all of that kind of stuff. So I had served with my mom. She was the children's pastor most of my growing up years. And I had served with her for a while. But you don't always see the behind the scenes, not Sunday morning stuff until you're on a church staff.
That's right.
Right. And so then the very first church staff that I was a part of was with my father-in-law. And I learned a lot, man. I learned a ton. But here's the one thing that I think I could have benefited from a little bit more, because I'm so energetic. I know it's going to sound braggadocious, but I'm very sorry. Because I'm so energetic, and because I am a visionary and kind of a get in there and do it sort of guy, I was kind of given a lot of free reign.
Yeah.
And I was given almost not really a blank check, but I was given like, hey, if we're going to, if you're going to have a vision, let's see if we can support it kind of thing. And I wasn't necessarily given a whole lot of guidelines. And so then I take that enthusiasm,
all that passion and zeal,
all of that, kind of out there thinking. And then I go to my next assignment.
Yeah.
And I was only there for 9 months because I did not fit into that staff at all. Now it wasn't a cultural issue. It wasn't a
right.
You know, I think there's the 3 C's that everybody looks for, right? Chemistry and culture, and I can't remember what the other one is.
I don't know, but I want to learn them.
Anyway, and so it wasn't a cultural issue. It wasn't a chemistry issue. It really was that I didn't get how they ran their staff. I didn't get how. So I understood the authority structure. I just didn't get how to be a part of their staff. And so that didn't last very long. The pastor and we kind of had it out in front of some people, and then quickly we moved on.
Okay.
And then I volunteered for, a quick minute before we got onto the next church staff. And I was taught a little bit there.
Yeah.
I was taught a little bit about, hey, when we call an all staff meeting, we want you to do X, Y, and Z. When we do, when you are on staff and you have an email, here are some expectations. And so I finally started to get some training on how to be on a church staff. Bro, this was almost 10 years into me being in ministry.
Almost 10?
It was like 1, 2, 3, 4, it's probably between 7 and 10 years of me actually already being in ministry that I have finally had a pastor sit me down and go, you're a loose cannon. I need to help you grow in your leadership. And I was like, cool.
Shout out to that pastor.
How do I do that?
Shout out to that pastor.
And this pastor was also very charismatic. This pastor was also, so he and I were, for the most part, 2 peas in a pod.
Yeah.
And so, but he said, I want you to be a better leader. This is how you do that. I want you to be on this, on this staff. This is how you do that. And that's where the 24-hour rule came. Like, you don't have to have the exact answer, but let me know that you got my email or my text within 24 hours.
Ooh, that's
right?
good. That's good.
I want you to show up to staff meetings early, if not on time.
There you go.
Right? When it's your turn to bring a devotion, don't phone it in. Right? Like, these are the things that I was taught.
What does that mean, don't phone it in?
In other words, don't bring me something that's like old and crusty that you don't bring me what you just preached to the kids, because by then I was a children's pastor. Right? Okay. Don't bring me last week's, kids' church message. I want you to bring me something fresh. It's also where I got the question of, what is God teaching you right now?
You have asked that question.
I have, and I will continue to ask it because it's an important question. Because to me, that means you're not phoning it in. But again, being on a church staff, that one was great. One day I walked up and I was like, hey, I'm ready to be on your staff full-time. Can't be here part-time anymore. I know I'm called to be in full-time ministry.
Yeah.
I didn't get that opportunity there, so I found it somewhere else. I took all of those lessons and all of my zeal and everything else, and it almost didn't fit into the next church staff.
So then, okay.
Because the next church staff, hold on.
Yeah, I was
next
gonna
church
ask
staff
you.
was so organized and so definitively should be this way. Here's the one thing that I did take from my previous ministry experiences: how to adapt and learn, how to learn and adapt to the senior pastor and their way of thinking then.
I was just getting ready to ask you.
So that I can actually fit into that church staff. But again, there hasn't, like, I didn't take a college course how to be on, Pastor so-and-so staff.
How was that process for you to adapt?
It was hard. Honestly, it was hard because, again, I have a lot of ideas. I like to be in a lot of things. I like to do a lot of things. I'm a visionary kind of person, so that means I'm not a dot the I's and cross the T's.
Yeah. Okay.
My final pastor before I actually became a senior pastor that I was under loved that man because he taught me so much about the back end of ministry that I never knew before.
Yeah.
And so all of my ministry side B stuff that we talk about, that's where I learned it from. And at the same time, like, the visionary part of me was not enough. I had to learn to dot the I's. I had to learn to cross the T's.
So does that mean you learned, like were you sitting in board meetings?
I was in a couple before I ever became a senior pastor. I wasn't in all of them.
Okay.
But I was in a couple of them. Because again, this is the kind of he's the kind of person who would print out the budget, say in March, right? January, February, March, we're 3 months in. which means of 12 months, what percentage of the year are we versus what percentage of the money of your budget you've spent.
Ooh,
It was to the penny.
That's really good.
And how to save money and how to be a good steward of money, how to be a good steward of people. I learned so many different things. But again, I've never taken a class that says, this is how you're a good staff person. This is how you fit into Pastor so-and-so's, calling and vision. And the one thing that I guess I knew intuitively, but needs to be taught is I know how to submit to someone else's vision.
Talk about that, bro.
Because if you don't know how to submit to someone else's vision, then when it's your turn, how are you then going to expect other people to submit to the vision that God's given you for your church?
That's a good moment to insert you reap what you sow.
Absolutely.
So, while you are, okay, can I ask you this?
Go for it.
Jumping from a couple different places, trying to find who Pastor Wes is as a leader, who Pastor Wes is within the church staff, do you feel like the way you moved around was healthy?
The way I left a couple places was not healthy.
Okay.
It was not. And the reason being, like I said, one of the very first, my stint in Dallas, Texas, was not healthy because the pastor and I had it out before I left, and I just left.
Okay.
I'm like, well, you're not going to treat me that way. You're not teaching me anything. And I got yelled at in front of my kids and their parents. And so he didn't do it right, but I also didn't respond right. And again, so that was a lesson learned for the next time I was on somebody's staff.
Yeah.
But it was a life lesson learned, not a, hey, here's a book to read. Hey, here's a class to take.
Yeah.
And so again, even though I've never been trained to be on a church staff, in the mix of all of that, I was also an assistant manager for a very big box retail.
Oh, okay.
And that's where I learned a lot of my management skills and a lot of my leadership skills too. So I was able to take that big box retail time and then apply it to some of the things that I did when I was in ministry, and and it worked. Some of the things actually worked.
So I love this. Now being in where you're at with the growth and the maturity, what are you looking for when somebody comes in on your staff, and how do you help come alongside them the way that pastor came alongside you and says, hey, I want to help show you how to be a leader. I want to help show, like, what are you looking for in somebody on staff?
Well, the first thing would be the assessment of, who they are and where their strengths are. And I'm not talking about Strengths Finder and, doing all of the personality quizzes and everything.
Right.
Though I've been through a bunch of those and it does help. Right. I'm not a huge fan of the Enneagram, but man, it helps.
Yeah.
Right. Not a huge fan of the Myers-Briggs either, but it helps.
I actually had to take that Myers-Briggs.
Yeah. And so, but it helps. And so what I look for when someone needs to be on staff, honestly, is are they called of God? Like if they're not called, then they're just really trying to fill a role. Okay. So I'll treat that person a little bit differently. Right. That's just in full honesty.
Yeah.
Right. We're not going to necessarily overproduce someone who's here to take care of the facilities and has no other leadership role. Right. Then, again, that's where I started, was on a facilities team. Yeah. I was told what to do, when to be here, where to go, all of that stuff. Though I had a calling, it was reserved for later on in my ministry, later on in my time. And so, but looking for someone on staff, you have a calling. Yeah, I want to know who you are a little bit. So that means we're going to need to spend some time together.
That's right.
That means we're going to need to make sure and, laugh at each other's jokes. Or tell each other, hey, that was a lame joke.
Yeah.
I take people to lunch frequently.
Yeah, no, for
sure.
So
because I fully believe that you can get to know somebody better if you eat with them or serve with them.
Yeah.
Right. And so I want to be able to do both. And so then finding that person going, okay, I see this in you. I see that in you. How can I help encourage that in you? So much so that actually one of one of our volunteer staff here at the church, she gave me a huge compliment the other day. She's like, I think you're a great leader, but here's what you need to do better. Will you receive that? And I was like, absolutely.
That's huge.
And she says, I think you need to do more, like you need to get better at one-on-one leading.
Okay.
Like you can lead really well in a group, but one-on-one, like you could do this part better. And I said, well, explain that a little more. And she did. And I said, I hear you. I got that. And now that person on our volunteer staff is, I mean, she's dynamite.
Okay. So I want to go back because I know I mentioned about being an intern and I mentioned, 40 interns. It's just free manual labor. What are your thoughts on intern programs that are done correctly?
That's what I would say is they would need to be done correctly. Now, what is done correctly in my mind look like
I guess,
according to someone else?
Right.
So in my mind, an intern program has to be to an end.
Okay.
I don't just want free manual labor.
Okay.
Right. Because I'm also not willing to ask you to do something that I won't do.
That's good.
Or haven't done.
There you go.
Right. Every Sunday now we set up tables and chairs and we have to then at the end of service we have to set everything back up for one of our rentals that actually takes over right after us. And so if I'm not willing to do it, then why would I ask you to do it?
That's so good.
Okay. That's the first thing. Secondly, I think an internship needs to have an end. What am I trying to identify your calling? Am I trying to set you up to be on the staff? Am I trying to just grow you as a leader? Do I really just want you to serve? Like
that's really good.
There should be an end result of an internship program because let's say to use one of the biggest companies out there, if you intern at Google, the point of interning at Google is to see if you can work then at Google, so that you'd be a part of it and or find your niche or this is not the culture for you and that's okay, that kind of thing. And so why would churches do it any differently? If I'm going to start an internship program, it's so that I can then maybe teach you a little bit, train you a little bit, find your calling, find your niche, or go, I don't think you're called to ministry.
And I think that has to be said more.
Right.
Okay. I've heard it said from one of my friends on staff. I consider him a friend. He's a good guy. That he's never seen the church have a healthy staff before. Have you ever been on a staff within going through the different changes? Have you ever been a part of a healthy staff? Have you ever been a part of a non-healthy staff? And how did that play a role into how you showed up for work?
Ooh, that's a big question. Have I ever been a part of a healthy staff? Yes. Have I helped create a healthy staff here at the church? I would hope so.
Yeah.
I really feel like there have been seasons where our staff was healthy and we were productive. And here's the thing, you can see the results of that type of health and maturity. For sure. Which right now at the church, and in all honesty, right now at the church, because there's literally like me on staff and everybody else is volunteer right now. Yeah. You can feel that in the church. You really can. Yeah. I become the bottleneck, and at the same time I become the person who's like, hey, I'm trying to get other people to help out. And then I go, oh, but I'm not spending enough time with you, but I'm not actually training you right, but I'm not. And that's what this person was telling me. Yeah. You need to do better at this one-on-one stuff. So I'm working on that. Okay. Right. How does it affect going to work? So when I was on a bad staff, which I've been on one or two, you basically clock in and clock out.
Treat it just like that.
Right. You kind of treat it like a job more than indulging in your calling. Am I saying that's the right thing to do? No, not at all. But it's a lot easier to do. It's a lot harder to want to be passionate for somebody else's thing if you don't feel valued, if you don't feel heard, if you don't feel appreciated, if you don't feel like your contributions actually mean anything. Yeah. Right. And so, I mean, it's just like any other job that's out there. honestly. So if you're doing it as an internship, now there's a couple types of internships, right? Sign up and then come and serve, or sign up, pay, and then come and serve.
That I did. I did the second one.
You did the second one?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that either is right or wrong. Sometimes you need skin in the game.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think it needs to be for a purpose. It needs to be towards an end.
Okay. You know how there's like a training period on a regular job?
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel as if the church needs that?
There could be a little more of that. But here's the caution. In my initial gut feeling, my initial caution would be too much of that then leads to a corporate feel.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Like I want you to succeed, so I'm not judging everything you do for the first 90 days. But I'm kind of judging everything you do for the first 90 days because I want to see if you're going to be a fit here, right?
So then how do you do it? What do you do? Because we believe what Colossians chapter 3:23 says, work as if you're working do everything you are doing as if you're working unto the Lord.
Right.
How do we then, how do you as a senior pastor bring somebody on the staff and then show them the culture, show them who we are, vision, mission?
Mm-hmm.
We want to make sure we constantly have this language.
Right,
how do you breed that training ground for the new people or for your staff, but not make it feel like a corporation because you're still a church, even though the church is a business.
Still a business.
So how do you do that?
Very carefully. I know that sounds like a cop-out answer.
No, it doesn't. I get it.
But we have to remember, first and foremost, even as a business, we are about people.
Okay.
So in the first 90 days or so, but let me back it up a little bit. In the interview process to bring someone on staff, like listen to the Holy Spirit, listen to the answers that are coming out, listen to, for your keywords that you're trying to, hey, I'm really trying to fill this role. And if they don't say anything about that actual role, then maybe they're not the person for that job.
Okay.
About 5 years ago, 4.5, 5 years ago here at the church, we brought somebody through the entire interview process, all the way up to the offer of the hire.
Yeah.
And there was just something about the answers and the feel of the rest of the team that was like, I don't think this would be a good hire. And so we didn't actually offer the position to this person.
Wow.
And I mean, went through the individual interview, went through the board interview, went through the staff interview. And
Thank you for answering that, because you must have read my mind, because I was getting ready to ask you what's that process. Okay.
Right. So the individual interview really is, hey, I as a senior pastor have a position out there, and I'm going to filter through the 10, 15 people, which now in this season is more like 3 or 4 people.
Yeah.
That maybe want to fulfill this position.
Yeah.
But then I kick it up to the board, because the board are like, hey, we can financially support this or we can't. And then if I and the board are on the same page, then I take it to the other staff. That I'm looking for culture. That I'm looking for fit, right? Okay. I'm looking for charisma, or what's the word? Chemistry.
Okay.
I'm looking for chemistry. Yeah. And so
are those the 3 C's?
Yeah. I can't remember one of them. One of them is culture and one of them is chemistry, and I don't remember the third one. We'll look that up, and I'll put it somewhere in the show notes. But then, so we did all of that. We got all the way towards the end, and we just couldn't offer that person. And I think that it was a good thing. I think we were actually listening. So to answer your question, and how do you do that? A lot of it is Holy Spirit led. And again, sounds like a cop-out answer, but you have to be able to say, we've made the right choice. Now let's train this person, right? Now let's actually see how is this person going to fit in? How are they going to be a gear in the business of church? And and how can I support this person? Now, I'll be the very first person to say I didn't do that very great for all of my staff members, right? I've got at least 2 children's directors that I know for sure I could have worked with closer and better, and maybe they would have still been here. Maybe.
Okay, last question, because we got to wrap up.
Okay.
Do you feel that it is almost easier to just bring somebody in raw? And I think you answered it, but like, okay, nope. Do you feel like churches need to go through the interviewing process like what you did? Because I went through that interview process where I had a phone call with my senior pastor. I had to sit down with 3 individuals. And the 3 individuals who I really sat with were really, like, when I look at it in hindsight, it was things back then that maybe we dealt with that we might have needed to deal with.
Right.
But I appreciated that. But out of being the 8th youth pastor at this church, this is the first time I think this process was ever enforced.
Okay.
So do you feel as if churches need to incorporate a process like that?
Yes. I think if you're hiring from outside, yes, you need to do the due diligence of getting the person through a definitive hiring process. Yes. And I said outside because
I heard that.
I feel, and I haven't done this well yet, so I'm not speaking from experience, I'm speaking from desire.
Okay.
I feel as though if we're doing a decent job, I'm not saying a good job, but a decent job as senior pastors, we're identifying the people in our current church that have a calling and have the ability, and we're training up from within and hiring from within. Yeah. Which is really hard to do because so many people volunteer for so many years, and then when there is a need, they've already put in their time. I hate to say it that way, but that's kind of how some people feel it. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Or we pastors are afraid to ask somebody to take a risk to step into a calling into the kingdom. Right. So as a senior pastor, if I'm going to ask somebody to give up, their almost 6-figure income to come and do ministry here for way less,
that's a huge risk.
It's a huge ask. That's a big risk on both parts. Now, am I saying that God won't provide or won't do what he's going to do? No, I'm very sure that he would. I've seen it before. I've just never done it. And I'm trying to do some of that now.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to say, hey, from the group of people that the Lord has already, blessed me with and has given, under the leadership that we have here, let's identify those gifts, those callings, and then let's say, hey, do you want to be on staff? Which is one of the reasons why we've started the concept of volunteer staff. I'm going to treat you like staff, but I can't pay you yet.
Okay, that's
right?
good. That's good.
But that doesn't mean that I don't want to. If the possibility comes, if the potential comes, but we're still post-pandemic recovery right now, so I can't hire a children's person right now.
Yes, sir.
So I have somebody who is on staff in a volunteer capacity, who is being trained but brought up from within.
Like they understand you, the culture
right.
of Hope Church and all that.
Right. Yes,
okay.
Exactly. And so anyway, it's easier said than done.
Yeah.
It's way easier said than done. But I guess to loop it all the way back around again, I've never been trained to be on a church staff. So then as a senior pastor, I'm wanting to do those things for others that maybe I didn't get for myself. I'm not the best at it.
No, I love that though.
I'm getting better at it.
I love that. Hey, listen, we love you so much, and I'm so glad that you're here. I'm glad that you're tuning in this season. We're kind of diving deeper. I feel like already with episode 3, we're just kind of getting into like the heart of just like who we are. I think the heart behind the church, and so in these episodes, when you hear these questions, they're really coming from a space of like learning and wanting to learn. So, hey, if you have not liked or subscribed, make sure you do that. You can do that on YouTube and on Spotify. You can go to buy me a coffee
facebook.com/mintalkspodcast.
Yes. And comment below.
Yes.
Like if you may hear something that, hey, you know what? I have a question about that. Please ask us. We don't know everything, but we're willing to walk with you through anything. And
Exactly.
so, hey, what's episode 4 going to be?
Episode 4 is going to be the power and the problem with should. The power and the problem with the word should. There's a lot of people who tend to should all over the place. And so we are going to cover that in our next episode. Hey, thank you guys for being with us. We appreciate it. We'll talk about that later. Bye.